The first week passed in a careful dance of boundaries and discoveries. Jace converted the spare room into a functional living space, and Mira watched his every move with the intense curiosity of a child starved for new experiences. Her questions came in rapid-fire bursts. Why did humans have round pupils instead of vertical ones? Could he really not see in low light? Was Earth actually covered in water like the stories said? Venna observed these interactions from a distance, her expression unreadable, but her body language gradually relaxing. On the 8th day, she approached him as he repaired a malfunctioning moisture collector behind the house. "She likes you," Venna said, handing him a specialized tool he'd been reaching for. "That's rare. Mira's been cautious around strangers since Torin died." Jace wiped sweat from his forehead, leaving a streak of grime. "She's a good kid. Smart, too. She figured out the problem with this collector before I did. She has her father's mind." Venna settled onto a nearby crate, watching him work. He could diagnose failing systems just by listening to them. Called it intuitive engineering. Is that why raiders targeted his outpost? Venna's luminescence dimmed slightly. A Sylvari physiological response to emotional distress that Jace had learned to recognize. They wanted his research on energy field manipulation. When he refused to cooperate, they killed everyone there. Her fingers curled into fists. 12 scientists gone in minutes. Jace set down his tools, giving her his full attention. "I'm sorry. That kind of loss doesn't fade easily." "No, it doesn't." Venna met his gaze. "But staying frozen in grief helps no one. Least of all Mira. She needs to see that life continues. That building something new doesn't dishonor what we've lost." The intensity in her words suggested she was convincing herself as much as explaining to him. Before Jace could respond, a shadow fell across them. A tall Sylvari male stood there, his skin a deeper silver than Venna's, marked with the intricate patterns that indicated high social status among his people. "Venna," the man said, his tone possessive in a way that made Jace's jaw tighten. "I heard you'd taken in a human boarder." "How unexpected." "Bresic." Venna stood, her posture shifting to something defensive. "Jace is helping with repairs and teaching Mira. It's a practical arrangement." Bresic's eyes raked over Jace with undisguised contempt. "How practical? A strange human living in your home, sleeping under your roof. What would Torin think?" "Torin would think I'm doing what's necessary for our daughter's future," Venna replied, her voice cold. "Which is more than the colony's merchant consortium has offered. I've made my intentions clear." Bresic stepped closer to Venna, ignoring Jace entirely. "You need a partner of appropriate standing, someone who can provide for you and Mira properly. Someone of your own species who understands our ways." "I need," Venna said sharply, "to make my own decisions without interference from someone who sees me as property to be acquired." Bresic's expression hardened. "You're making a mistake, Venna. This human, do you even know why he's out here in the frontier?" "What he's running from?" Jace stood, wiping his hands on his work pants. "Why don't you ask me directly instead of talking around me?" "Very well." Bresic turned to him, satisfaction glinting in his eyes. "What brings a former Earth Engineering Corps officer to our remote colony, Hawkins? Surely not the magnificent scenery. I needed a change of pace." "A change from what?" "From the Titan Station expansion project where your miscalculation caused a structural failure, where 17 workers died when a support beam gave way 3 weeks ahead of schedule." Bresic's smile was cruel. "Yes, I make it my business to know who enters our colony, especially those who get close to vulnerable widows." The blood drained from Jace's face. Venna's sharp intake of breath cut through the silence. "Is it true?" she asked quietly. Jace forced himself to meet her gaze. "Yes, I designed a load-bearing system for the station expansion. I certified it as safe. 3 weeks later, during a shift change, the beam fractured. 17 people died before emergency teams could evacuate the section." His voice remained steady, despite the familiar guilt crushing his chest. "The investigation found I'd used incorrect stress calculations for that particular titanium alloy. The error was mine. And yet you walk free," Bresic said, "while those families mourn. I was cleared of criminal negligence because the error was unintentional and my safety checks followed protocol. But that doesn't change the fact that my mistake killed 17 people." Jace turned to Venna. "I should have told you from the start. I understand if you want me to leave." Venna stood motionless, her bioluminescence flickering with the intensity of her emotions. Bresic watched with obvious satisfaction, clearly expecting her to order Jace away. Instead, she looked at Bresic with cold fury. "Get out of my home. Venna, be reasonable. Out. Now." Her hand moved to the plasma cutter on her belt. "You came here to poison my decisions with information you had no right to weaponize. Whatever Jace's past, it's his to share, not yours to exploit." Bresic's face darkened with anger, but he backed toward the perimeter. "You'll regret choosing a human failure over a respected member of your own people. When this arrangement falls apart, don't come seeking my help." After he left, silence stretched between Jace and Venna. Mira appeared in the doorway, her young face worried. "Mom? Is Jace leaving?" Venna's expression softened as she looked at her daughter. "No, sweetheart. Jace made a mistake once, like all of us do. That doesn't define who he is now. But 17 people died," Jace said roughly. "That's not just a mistake. That's a tragedy you've carried ever since," Venna interrupted. "Tell me, did you learn from it? I triple-check every calculation now. I never certify anything without independent verification. He stopped, throat tight. "You became more careful, more thorough, more aware of the cost of failure." Venna stepped closer. "My husband used to say that humans who've failed and learned are more valuable than those who've never been tested. He believed your species grows through adversity in ways most aliens don't. That's generous, considering what I did. It's practical." Venna's hand touched his arm, her cool skin grounding him. "I knew you carried guilt. I saw it that first day. I chose to trust you anyway because I saw how you looked at Mira, how careful you were with everything you touched. That's the man I invited into my home, not the engineer who made a fatal error years ago." Mira moved between them, looking up at Jace with solemn eyes. "Did you mean for those people to die?" "No," Jace said hoarsely. "Never. Then it was an accident. Accidents happen." She stated it with the simple logic of childhood. "You're teaching me to be careful so I don't have accidents." That seems smart. The absolution from a 6-year-old child hit harder than any official inquiry. Jace knelt to her level. "I promise I'll be extra careful teaching you. Your safety matters more to me than anything." Mira smiled, then hugged him quickly before darting back inside. Jace stood slowly, finding Venna watching him with an expression that made his heart race. "Thank you," he managed. "For what? Not condemning you for being human?" Venna's lips curved. "Jace, in the months since Torin died, I've had dozens of colonists offer sympathy while quietly avoiding any real connection with us. Bresic offered marriage while seeing me as a status acquisition. You're the first person who's treated me like a partner and Mira like a person worth investing in. You care. Despite your guilt, despite wanting to stay isolated, you care about us." She moved closer, and Jace could smell the faint cinnamon-like scent of her skin. "That matters more than a perfect past." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Then alarms shrieked across the colony, 3 short blasts followed by a long wail. Venna's eyes widened. "Raiders," she breathed. They ran to the front of the house where other colonists were scrambling for defensive positions. 3 ships descended through the atmosphere, smaller than military vessels but heavily armed. Jace recognized the configuration, the same type that had hit Torin's research outpost. "Get Mira to the shelter," Jace ordered, his military training snapping into place. "Where are the colony's defenses?" "North perimeter, but we're undermanned. Most of our security personnel are at the mining operation." Venna was already moving, gathering Mira and emergency supplies. "I'll coordinate the defense. Go." As Venna disappeared with Mira toward the underground shelter, Jace sprinted to the defense station. A handful of Sylvari colonists were already there, looking terrified. He assessed their weapons. Adequate but poorly positioned. "Spread out," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of his military days. "Don't cluster. Use the prefab structures for cover and create crossfire angles." One colonist, an older male, hesitated. "You're the human." "Why should we?" "Because I've trained for this and you haven't. Move now or die together." Jace's tone left no room for argument. The colonists scrambled to positions as the raider ships landed. Armed figures poured out. A mix of species united by greed and violence. Jace counted quickly. 20 hostiles, maybe more in the ships. Not good odds. But he'd faced worse at Titan Station's aftermath. When he'd volunteered for every dangerous assignment trying to atone, the raiders advanced with overconfidence, expecting minimal resistance. Jace waited until they were committed, then gave the signal. Plasma fire erupted from multiple angles, catching the raiders exposed. 3 went down immediate. The twin sons of Thessia Prime beat down mercilessly on Jace Hawkins as he crested the final hill overlooking the frontier settlement. Dust caked his throat and his legs trembled with exhaustion after 3 days crossing the crystalline Badlands. The colony spread before him like a scattered handful of metal dice, prefab structures clustered around a central water processor, surrounded by nothing but miles of glittering purple sand. Not much to look at, but it was somewhere. Anywhere was better than the endless drifting he'd done since leaving Earth's military engineering corps under a cloud of failure and regret. Jace adjusted the straps of his pack and started down the slope. As he entered the settlement's perimeter, he noticed how quiet it was. A few Sylvari colonists moved between buildings, their distinctive bioluminescent skin casting faint glows even in the harsh daylight. They watched him with wary eyes. Humans were uncommon this far out in the frontier territories. He spotted what looked like a trading post and headed toward it, hoping to find work and a place to sleep. But as he passed a standalone dwelling near the colony's edge, something made him pause. The structure was better maintained than most, with solar panels catching the light and a small hydroponic garden flourishing despite the arid conditions. It spoke of care, of someone trying to build something real in this harsh place. The door opened before he could move on, and Jace found himself staring at the most striking woman he'd ever seen. She was silvery, tall and graceful, with silver skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. Her hair fell in waves of deep indigo past her shoulders, and her eyes were the color of Earth's oceans, a blue-green he hadn't seen since leaving home. She held a plasma cutter in one hand, clearly in the middle of repairs. "Can I help you, human?" Her voice was melodic but edged with caution. "I'm looking for work," Jace said, pulling his gaze up from where it had wandered. "Engineering, repairs, construction, whatever you need." The woman studied him with those oceanic eyes, and Jace felt uncomfortably exposed under her scrutiny. "We have engineers. I'm sure you do. But I'm willing to work cheap, and I've crossed 3 systems to get here. I'm not picky." Something flickered across her face. Perhaps recognition of his desperation, or maybe she saw something of her own struggle reflected in his weathered features. "My name is Venna," she said finally. "Come inside. We should talk." The interior of her home was sparse but comfortable. Soft lighting compensated for the harsh exterior glare, and Jace noticed children's drawings pinned to one wall, stick figures holding hands beneath 3 moons. A small girl peered at him from a doorway, her silver skin marked with the subtle patterns that indicated youth among the Sylvari. "Mira, go to your room," Venna instructed gently. The girl vanished without argument. Venna gestured for Jace to sit at a small table, then poured him water from a purifier. He drank gratefully, the cool liquid washing away some of the desert's grit. "I don't need an engineer," Venna said, settling across from him. "The colony has enough of those. But I need something else, and I think you might understand why." Jace set down the cup, confused. "I'm not sure what you mean." Venna's luminescent fingers drummed on the table, a nervous gesture that somehow made her seem more human. "My husband died 8 months ago. Raiders hit the research outpost where he worked. Mira was only 5 when she lost her father, and she's growing up in a dangerous world without his guidance." The pieces clicked into place with uncomfortable clarity. "You want me to help raise your daughter. I want her to learn things I can't teach her. Survival skills, self-defense, how to think like an engineer the way her father did." Venna's gaze was intense, almost challenging. "I've watched 3 dozen colonists pass through here in the last few months, and you're the first one who looked like he's carrying something worth learning from. That's a hell of an assumption based on a 30-second conversation. Is it wrong?" Jace looked away, his jaw tightening. The ghosts of his past failures whispered in the back of his mind. The bridge that collapsed because he missed a calculation error. The colonists who died because of his mistake. "I'm not exactly father material. There's a reason I'm out here instead of back on Earth. And there's a reason I'm asking a stranger for help instead of relying on this colony's so-called community." Venna's voice softened. "We all carry our damage, Jace Hawkins. The question is whether we let it destroy us or forge us into something stronger." The use of his full name surprised him. "How did you— Your pack has military stamps. I searched the colonial database while you were drinking. Former engineering corps. Honorable discharge 2 years ago. No criminal record. She paused. Also, no family contacts listed, no permanent address, and a citation for gross negligence that was later reduced. Whatever happened, you're running from it. Jay should have felt violated by the invasion of privacy, but instead he felt oddly relieved. No pretense, no careful dancing around his history. The citation was deserved. People died because I made a mistake. And you've been punishing yourself ever since. Venna stood, moving to a cabinet and retrieving a bottle of amber liquid. She poured 2 glasses. In silvery culture, we believe that guilt honored is a burden carried. Guilt wallowed in is a waste of life. She pushed a glass toward him. My husband believed humans had a capacity for growth that most species lack. That your mistakes teach you better than our successes teach us. Your husband sounds like he was an optimist. He was. Pain flickered across Venna's face, quickly suppressed. He was also pragmatic. He would have wanted Mira to have every advantage in life, including learning from someone who understands the cost of failure. Jace picked up the glass, the amber liquid catching the soft light. What exactly are you offering? Room, board, and purpose. Stay for a few months, teach Mira what you know, help with repairs around the settlement. In return, I give you time to figure out who you want to be next. Venna's smile was slight but genuine. And before you ask, yes, I live alone with my daughter. Yes, that creates complications. But I'm not looking for romance or a replacement for Torin. I'm looking for someone who can help me give my daughter a future. The clarity of her terms should have made it simple. But Jace felt the weight of something unspoken in the air between them. The way her eyes lingered on him suggested she wasn't as unaffected as she claimed. The way his pulse quickened when she smiled told him he wasn't either. I'll stay for 3 months, he said finally. Trial basis. If it's not working out for either of us, I move on with no hard feelings. Venna extended her hand across the table. When Jace took it, her skin was cooler than a human's, but somehow more alive, a subtle current of energy passing between them. Agreed. You can take the spare room. Dinner is in 2 hours. Mira will want to meet you properly. As she released his hand and turned to check on her daughter, Jace wondered what he'd just agreed to. Coming here, he'd been looking for simple work, a way to exist without thinking too hard about the past or future. Instead, he'd found a woman with ocean eyes and starlight skin, offering him something far more dangerous than employment. She was offering him a chance at redemption, wrapped in the everyday intimacy of helping raise a child and sharing a home. And despite every instinct screaming at him to run, Jace found himself hoping he wouldn't screw this up the way he'd screwed up everything else.